I could watch a spin-off Portal Stone alternate reality murder mystery drama with Loyal and Hurin being like Sherlock Holmes and Watson, and I could watch that for at least 3 seasons before it just tanked. What is up, guys? It's Ari coming at you with another book review. Today we are going to be reviewing the second installment in the Wheel of Time, The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan. I'll start off the review by saying that I didn't love this book, but I didn't dislike it either. It's somewhere in the middle for me. There was so much potential in it for me to love it, and there are definitely moments in this book where it gripped me, but I would say my biggest issue was pacing. Maybe that's just the type of reader I am, but I felt like it took a while for it to get interesting. I felt like Robert Jordan spends a lot of time describing and setting things up, and that just doesn't jibe with me. That being said, there are still great qualities about this book. I would say that it's further on the good side of things than bad. We're just going to start this review off with non-spoilery stuff. I'm just going to kind of bullet point, give you my positives and negatives to the best of my ability, not spoil anything, but to be fair, this book is like almost 30 years old, so we left off The Eye of the World, I would say, on a more somber note. Rand, I think, if anything, ended that book just being more stressed. I think most of the members of the sort of Emmonsfield group were in shambles by the end of the book. And I would say that we start this story in a similar place. Everyone is obviously worried. There's a lot on everybody's mind, including Rand. There's a lot on Rand's mind. We spend most of this book with Rand, Egwene. We get some Nynaeve as well. We don't get a lot from my favorite character from Eye of the World, Perrin. Fingers crossed that we get more from him in Dragon Reborn. Matt Cawthon, I'm impartial with. From what I hear from friends and others, fans who have read the books, Matt gets way better. So I am excited to see what Jordan does with him. And I think that will lead me into my first point about this book that I think is the most important for me, and that is characters. On one hand, my favorite characters from The Eye of the World don't get a lot of page time in the book. You know, if you are a big fan of Moiraine or Lan, they're in this book, but they're not the main focus of what's going on. We're far more focused with 2 or 3 other parties, basically. But nonetheless, there is some interesting stuff going on with a few of them. I wasn't too big a fan of one in particular, but I'll kind of get into more detail about that in my spoiler portion. On the other hand, I really liked the new characters we got. I'm talking Ingtar. We get a lot more with his character. I loved the sort of journey his character went on. And I was a big fan of a character known as the Sniffer. Yeah, he was a highlight for me in terms of new characters. Something that was a little strange for me was that there were some twists. I felt like there were things in the book, whether they be characters or ideas that were conveyed, that were written in almost too obvious a way. I just felt like it was a little too easy at times to know what was going on. But then again, there are things in this book that happen that I was totally shocked by, so it kind of balances itself out. And that's what I mean about not knowing exactly where I lie on the spectrum of what I think of this book. But I do think the positive outweighs the negative overall. I found Rand's journey in this book to be interesting. There were some things that stayed the same about him that I would have liked to see an evolution of. There were also some moments for him, though, that I would put at the top of my list of best part in the book, but also best part in the 2 books I've read so far. There's a particular scene involving, without spoiling anything, let's say a stone, and that gripped me. I was hooked for that whole chapter. I stopped for a second and I kind of took a deep breath because I knew that this was going to be intense, and it was. It was amazing through and through. In terms of its present effects on our characters, and in terms of how it affects the plot of the book, incredibly effective. So yeah, big ups for that. I have to come back to Robert Jordan's extremely detailed descriptions of things. Yeah, it's a tough one for me. Sometimes I actually have to take a break from the book and just read something it's just got a different vibe to it in terms of that, because I do have a hard time paying attention to it. But sometimes I must admit that it feels like a bit of a chore. So sometimes I just need to take a break. I'd also say that the second half of the book is significantly better than the first half. It worked a lot better for me. In the second half, things really pick up, stakes get a little higher, characters' progression in terms of where they're all at is cool. But again, there's some characters I wish made appearances. We get little sort of tidbits and implications of them, which is better than nothing. But I would have loved to see some of the characters Jordan has already set up in Eye of the World. Nynaeve was a character that I had a tough time with in Eye of the World. She improved a lot in this book for me. It took a little bit, but she went from being a character I didn't care for at all to someone that's a lot higher on my list now. Sometimes I just find that her character is, I don't know what the proper word is. I think that this anger she shows, or stubbornness she shows at times, not at times, all the time, doesn't fit someone who calls themselves a wisdom. You know, I feel like one who considers themselves to be wise, let alone someone who's been given the title of the wise, the wisdom, should have more control over their emotions. I understand that she's protective, but I think it's a little ridiculous at times. I think it's unnecessary. But I also think that what Jordan does better in this book is show those sides of her that were sort of, I had a negative experience with in Eye of the World, how those traits, just from a different perspective, are, you know, a positive thing. And it worked for me in this book. Egwene was great in this book. I think Egwene is pretty solid through the first two books at least. I like her character. I'm looking forward to seeing where her character is going. We got a little bit more about her abilities. I'm a big magic system guy. I love magic systems, and I grow more curious with every page when it comes to Sayadine and Saidar. I want to know more about it, and I want to see what Egwene and Nynaeve are capable of. Of course, I want to see what Rand is capable of as well, but I have a growing curiosity about Egwene, and how certain characters talk about her only makes me more curious. Overall, I would say that The Great Hunt was not bad. It was okay to say the least. I personally enjoyed Eye of the World more, honestly. So yeah, that was my review of The Great Hunt. Overall, I would put this book in the 6.5 out of 10 range. Not bad, not great. I only grow more curious where Jordan is going with these future installments, and I hear that Dragon Reborn is solid, so I look forward to seeing if we get any more returning characters and what he expands on from The Great Hunt that he will bring into Book 3. If you don't want to hear any spoilers, if you haven't read The Great Hunt, this is the time to leave. But yeah, let's start doing a little bit of spoiler talk. The biggest takeaways I had from that introduction were, A, Matt was unreasonably rude to Rand. I mean, I guess you could say that whatever the dagger is doing to him is potentially just increasing his distrust with people, so that's potentially what's causing this issue between him and Rand. But I don't think it's an unpopular opinion that he seemed to just lack the perspective that this guy that he doesn't want to be around carried him, took care of him, fed him when he was basically dying. And they took care of each other. I mean, they were just being brothers to one another, you know, trying to survive. And it just felt like he just forgot all of that. Fortunately, it didn't lead anywhere bad in this book. And second, similar thing happened in the beginning of this book. You know, we start out in this area, this kingdom. We get introduced to everybody, and then bam, Trollocs show up, and we are off to the races. The story has begun. They come in, they take the Horn of Valere, they kill a couple of guards. I think they knock out Matt and Egwene. Padan Fain has stolen the dagger, and they are on the run. And now we have our story. Rand is mainly there to get the dagger for Matt, which is just another reason why I was frustrated with Matt, because it was like, see, like that's who Rand is. But either way, they're in a group together, and they are off to the races to retrieve both of these items. Egwene, Nynaeve, and I believe Elaine, and also Min, go with Moiraine and a few other Aes Sedai, and they head to the White Tower for their training. This portion of the book didn't interest me as much. There were portions that were great, but overall I wasn't that interested in it. We also get some perspectives of Padan Fain and Captain Bornhold. I liked both. I liked Padan Fain more, but I found that I was curious about Captain Bornhold's character. Is it Bornhold? Bjornhold? I think it's Bornhold. I like Captain Bornhold. That he kind of reminds me of Lan in terms of his stillness. Egwene's character specifically didn't blow me away in this book. I liked her. I felt like I was at the same level with her as I was in Eye of the World. I liked her all the same. I liked what we got in terms of her ability to interact in that dream world. And there was an Aes Sedai, I don't remember if it was Liandrin, I think it was Liandrin, who stated that she was a dreamer, which I'm assuming is like a talent to be able to do that, whatever talents are. They seem to be like unique sort of abilities, like Kekkei Genkais from Naruto, or these sort of unique bending styles from Avatar. I did not find it shocking that Liandrin was a Black Aja. I mean, I felt like it was so obvious that she was not a good person. When Rand and Loial and Hurin are split up and they accidentally, teleport themselves to the alternate reality, and they meet Selene, this mysterious woman. Again, another one of those things where I just thought, it is way too obvious that this woman is lying. Not even lying, but just hiding something. It just seems so obvious that she was manipulating each of them. The second Loial seemed to be distracted by her. I was like, okay, something is wrong here. And his seeming attraction to Selene was just like, okay, what is she doing? She's completely manipulating them. And it just bothered me that it never really clicked for any of them. It didn't click for Rand. I hoped that, I assumed that she was doing something to manipulate them or veer their thoughts away, from seeing the obvious. But even with Rand, he talks about when he taps into the one power, how it's like he can't just take a little bit. Like the second that door opens, it's just a flood of power, right? And I hope that whenever he would tap into the one power, that it would almost overwhelm whatever she was doing to him, and that he would see, like, clearly that she wasn't who she was saying she was. She disappeared, I don't know how many times. I think it was like 3 times. She just left. How is that not suspicious? Just leaving a note behind being like, had to go, my love. It's like, come on, man. Like, what's your deal? These guys literally just saved you from an alternate reality. Perrin was good in this book as well. I liked him again in this book. I want more of Perrin. I liked that he took more of a leadership role. His abilities, whatever they are, I look forward to learning more about them. I really hope that Elias is part of his journey to learning more about his abilities. I really liked Elias in Eye of the World, so hopefully he becomes a mentor figure for Perrin. Nynaeve, like I said before, I just find that sometimes her behavior is contradictory to this position or role that she took up. Obviously, I guess she's not a wisdom anymore, but I think she still recognizes herself as the wisdom of the Two Rivers or Emond's Field. And I just found at times that her stubbornness it didn't make sense. Like, for example, when she started getting really angry with the Amyrlin seat. Like, I understand to an extent why she'd be upset, but I mean, this person, the Amyrlin seat, is the leader of the Aes Sedai, who are considered to be almost like an Illuminati of this world. Like, they work in secret. People call them witches, and they're incredibly powerful people. And this woman, the Amerlin Seat, is like, I don't know if she's the most powerful, but she has to have some level of power to be respected in this way, right? So to have Nynaeve still show that stubbornness was like, it's a definite show of her character and how she's like, she doesn't recognize those things in people. But at the same time, I find that there is this, I feel, a bit of a contradiction in terms of, she calls herself a wisdom. And it just doesn't seem very wise for her to behave in that manner sometimes. I will say, though, as we get to that second half of the book and, the Shan Chan are introduced and she, throws a leash on one of them, starts firing lightning from the sky and just blasting them. I love that side of Nynaeve. I was like, okay, this is Nynaeve. Like, this is what she's about. I just switched with her character at the end of the book. I was like, yep, I'm on your side. As long as you keep doing this, like, this is awesome. It was a bummer to see Egwene get captured because I wanted to see her fight back. I didn't find Elaine that interesting. It seems like she's going to be an important character in the books, so I'm hoping that she becomes a bit more interesting as it goes on, but I wasn't a big fan of hers. Rand's arc, this whole book, I just felt bad for him. He's so cerebral. Obviously, he's got a lot on his mind in terms of, who his family is, where he comes from, what his purpose is in life, the fact that he feels this temptation of this overwhelming power, but he can't touch it because it's too dangerous. He's just got a lot going on. Seeing his growth when his group meets back up with Ingtar's group was great. I didn't even notice it until right when he started talking to everybody and he starts giving everybody orders, and I was thinking, oh wow, look at him. And boom, just like that, the next line was everyone just being silent, staring at him. And I was like, yes, this is perfect. Because he's growing. He's becoming a leader. Spending all that time with Hurin was worth it because it pushed him to take a leadership role. That's a big thing I loved about Hurin. I hadn't even noticed that he was developing those leadership qualities. Matt sort of annoyed me for that beginning portion of the book, but we didn't really get a lot of him throughout it. When we did get him later on in the book, it was great. And that leads me to my favorite part of the book, a part that works on so many different levels, and that is the moment when, everyone has regrouped. They have to travel to Tomon Head, and they don't have much time to get there. So Rand does this sort of Hail Mary move. I think Varen Sedai tries to get him to use the portal stone and teleport them to Tomon Head. And he does this, and if you've read this book, one of the craziest scenes I've read in a fantasy book proceeds to happen. And Rand basically experiences all of these alternate realities or existences that he could have lived. They were so interesting, how different each of them was, and I love these added details that Jordan puts in where in every single one, no matter which one it was, it didn't feel right. Even the ones that were sort of happy and, were all the things that he seems to think he wants or really wants. It always implied that even when he's married to Egwene and he has a kid and all these, he has all this stuff that he wants, in his gut, something just doesn't feel right. That was great. I loved that. And, on another level, everyone else had that experience too. Every single other person. Ingtar, it traumatized that guy so much, he stopped being a dark friend. That was a big shocker to find out that he was a dark friend. And I love that that's what shifted his mind. But even more so than him, Matt. When, Matt has a couple of lines, and he comes up to Rand, and he basically is he's freaking out. He's almost weeping, and he basically tells Rand, I would never betray you. Please believe me, I would never betray you. And that saved the earlier scene with him being cruel to Rand for me. It just, and I think it gave you so much information without telling you anything. We don't need to know what Matt saw. We don't need to know all of those things he saw to understand that he saw things he didn't want to see. He saw things that he wasn't willing to accept about himself, that he would never do, or he believes he would never do. I'm thinking that he's going to be put in a situation where he might. So I look forward to seeing if we get anything out of that. And even if, as if that wasn't crazy enough to have all of these people experience all of that, then we get dropped that they have moved 4 months into the future. And it's like, now the story's picked up. And on top of that, I wasn't that big of a fan of Egwene and Nynaeve's whole training stuff. I mean, I really liked Nynaeve's testing. That was cool. But I wasn't too excited to keep going with what was happening with them in the format it was being done in. And this 4-month time skip was like, oh, this is perfect, because boom, now they have 4 months of training. So that excited me to go back to them to see where they were at. And I was very happy with where they continued on from. So that one chapter brought the book back for me throughout my read. So yeah, I look forward to seeing what we get in The Dragon Reborn. I hope that we get more Loyal, more Hurin. I could watch a spin-off Portal Stone alternate reality murder mystery drama with Loyal and Hurin being like Sherlock Holmes and Watson, and I could watch that for at least 3 seasons before it just tanked. But I would watch every episode, every night, 1 hour long. They were the duo of duos for me. I love Hurin's need for leadership. I love Loyal, just through and through. He's such a sweetheart. I think both of those characters are great influences on Rand, especially Hurin for this book, because Rand needed to gain those traits of a leader, and Hurin requiring that was a fun way for him to do that. But yeah, that's my review for The Great Hunt. I look forward to seeing what The Dragon Reborn brings. Look out for a review of that in the coming weeks. Until then, thank you guys so much for watching. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you again sometime soon.